Welcome to our R.J-Redheart revenge, where OP shuts down his narcissistic mother. Our next Reddit post is from Phoenix. So just some backstory here. My parents got divorced when I was in kindergarten, so I was about 6 years old. My mom got full custody of us, and she suffered from mental illness. I believe that she has a borderline personality disorder, and she was also a typical narcissistic parent. Anyway, ever since the divorce, she would always tell us how it wasn't her fault that we didn't have enough money for things, and she would blame my dad. For example, if there was nothing to eat for breakfast, and we complained like small kids do when they're hungry, she would snap, "It's your father's fault, so go cry to him." I just learned to never complain and to do without. I spent my entire childhood taking care of her. My sister and I were trained from when I was about 8 years old to come right home from school, do our homework, and then clean the house and take care of ourselves. Don't ask mom to make dinner. Make it yourself. We had to do all the chores so mom didn't have to do anything. It sounds bizarre, but we thought that this was normal. Also, on a daily basis, she would hit us and tell us that we were worthless. Things got worse my senior year of high school. My grandma died a few months before that summer, and my mom quit her job and blew through all the money that my grandma left her before the summer was over. So in just one summer back in the year 2000, she blew through $75,000. She refused to get another job and kept coming up with excuses not to work. I need a break. Get off my back. I hurt my leg, etc. Meanwhile, she would go out drinking with her friend, acting like a carefree teenager. So, I spent my senior year of high school working hard at school, also working at my part-time job after school, and pretty much taking care of an overgrown child who refused to work or help out. Any time that a utility was shut off or there was no food in the house, she would just gripe, "You have a job. Why can't you pay for it?" If I brought up the fact that my dad sent her child support, she would complain that she had to pay for my sister's tuition, which I later learned was BS. She would flaunt the child support check and laugh, referring to it as mommy's paycheck. Flash forward to when I was about to go to college, and my mom kept bellyaching about the cost of college. Of course, she had saved $0 from my college fund. I couldn't afford a private university, so I decided to go to a reasonably priced and still highly regarded state university. During my freshman year, I was pretty much able to swing the cost of tuition and room and board thanks to a couple of grants. However, I was almost disqualified for financial aid for my second year of college. Why? Because my W-2s were mailed to my home address, and my mom, being the caring and supportive mother that she was, shredded them and threw them in the trash. I only found out because my sister was home one weekend and saw her do it. My mom denied it, and when I came home for spring break and pressed her for it, she lied and said that her friend had them. My sister called my mom out on this bluff by calling that friend, who didn't have my tax information. The friend, who worked as a CPA, was very concerned and told me and my sister to request duplicate W-2s and have them sent to her place because she would do them for us. My mom was pissed that we checked with her friend and called her out on her bluff, but true to her word, my mom's friend did my taxes for me. At this point, I learned that my mom hadn't been helping out my sister at all with tuition, like she claimed. Also, my sister mentioned this to my dad, who called her out and demanded to know where the child support was going. My mom insisted that he wasn't paying her enough money, and that's why she couldn't help us out. During my second year of college, my W-2s were once again sent home, and my mom once again accidentally threw them in the trash. I had to request duplicate W-2s from my summer job, not once, but twice because she kept throwing them in the trash. I filed my tax return late last year, and as a result, my student aid was also filed late, so I wasn't able to get the full amount of aid that I was due. Still, any time that I complained to her about having no food or no money in the house, it was always, "Complain to your father." Well, the summer before my third year, I was burned out on my mom's BS. I was working full-time for the summer and saving as much as I could, but she was refusing to help me out at all while I was home, with food or with anything. She was pissed that instead of paying for the house's phone bill, I had the audacity to spend my hard-earned money on a cell phone and pay that bill myself. She told everyone that I should just drop out, because I wasn't applying myself hard enough. Meanwhile, I was in the honors program, and she would play the Marty, with all of her friends, saying, "It's so hard when you have kids in college and they eat you out of house and home and still come to you for money." At the end of summer, I had saved up thousands of dollars, but the school wouldn't let me move into the dorm unless I paid $50 up front, which was about $10,000. I didn't know what to do because all summer the university had told me that I was all set. And then the day that I went to move in, they told me that I couldn't move into the dorm. I called my dad in a panic, and he spoke to someone who agreed to give me 24 hours. I moved in, and the next day my dad showed up, first thing with a coffee and a donut for me, and told me not to worry. He told me he was going to fix this once and for all. We went from office to office on campus, and he co-signed a loan, which he later paid off for me. And then he paid the balance on my tuition that the loan didn't cover. He then took me out to lunch and told me the truth. My mom never helped my sister with her tuition. My sister later confirmed this, but I wasn't surprised that my mom had lied. My dad had co-signed the loan to help my sister out, which he later paid off for, and my sister was able to get a scholarship and do co-op to pay for her last 2 years. He also advised me that my mom was not as poor as she seemed to be. As part of the divorce settlement, he had to pay the mortgage and property taxes on our house. Even though my sister was living on her own, my dad was paying my mom the same amount of child support, which was about $2,000 a month. This was despite the fact that I was living on campus for 75% of the year and my mom wasn't giving me a dime. I was hurt to think that my mom was just living off of my child support and constantly making me feel guilty for wanting anything or for not being able to cater to her every whim. For example, during the school year when I wasn't living at home, she would get pissed that I wouldn't come home on the weekends to clean the house for her. I thought about how bad she made me feel growing up and made me feel worthless when, in fact, had it not been for me or my sister, she wouldn't have had a roof over her head. After the divorce, my dad asked me to grant him access to my account so he could prove that my mom wasn't paying for my college and that I was. He asked me how I would feel if he took care of paying for college instead of paying my mom child support. Sounded good to me. He even told me that I could spend summer breaks at his house instead of my mom's. I called my mom and told her what my dad did, and she had no remorse. She told me it was my fault for not planning my finances better and for pissing away my money all summer. I just played dumb and said that she was right, but pointed out that I had done what she told me to by complaining to my dad. A month later, my mom called me up, pissed. My mom had spoken with the courts, and there was going to be a hearing in their divorce case. My dad had proven that my mom had not been paying for mine or my sister's tuition for college, and apparently, that was the exact reason why my dad was still being obligated to pay her child support. My dad told the judge that he would gladly pay for me to finish college, but he wasn't going to pay my mom any more child support or pay the mortgage on their house. If my mom didn't want to take over the mortgage, they could sell the house, and I could live with him over my breaks. My mom was freaking out over this and calling me selfish. I just reminded her that my tuition must cost a lot more than what she got in child support. She just kept laying guilt trips on me about how selfish I was because she didn't get to go to college right after high school, and how she never got to have 4 carefree years of college. I pointed out to her that she hadn't worked since my grandma died about 3 years ago, and I was working and going to school at the time, so she was the one living a carefree life. She pretty much ripped me a new one at that point. She tried to get back at my dad by not paying utilities on the house to make it seem like she needed the money. She then told me the electric and water were shut off, so if I wanted to come home for winter break, I needed to help her out. Meanwhile, she had moved in with her boyfriend at his condo. I told her that I would miss her, but I would just spend the break at my dad's house. She was pissed, and she cried about how selfish I was for not wanting to come home for Christmas. Side note, last Christmas she didn't give me a present, and instead, she threw away a bunch of my stuff. Why? Because my mom was pissed off at me that I didn't want to come home one weekend to help her clean. To get home, I had to take 2 buses, 2 trains, spend $20 one way, and then wait for her to hopefully remember to pick me up at the train station, which was another 20-minute drive. And she responded by putting a bunch of my stuff in boxes and throwing them on the front lawn. By the next time. I got home, and most of my things were destroyed by being left out in the rain. Anyway, my dad called my mom and reminded her that the child support hadn't stopped yet. They were going to list the house in a few months, so what was this nonsense about the utilities being shut off? She was pissed, but magically she came up with the money to turn the utilities back on. That spring, my dad officially took over paying for my college tuition, and she even made sure that I got my full financial aid by handling my W-2s. My mom lost her child support, and the judge told her that she had better cooperate with the sale of the house and keep up with the utility bills. Her boyfriend moved in with her until the house sold, and after that, she moved to another time zone. The real kicker? It was cheaper for my dad to pay college costs than to pay her child support. To summarize, my mom abused and exploited me, and I got my revenge by causing her to lose her child support and free rent by doing what she told me to do for years: complain to my father. No regrets. OP, I'm really glad that you got your revenge. But geez, can we get an F down in the comments for this poor father? First, he had both of his kids ripped away from him and had zero custody. Then he had to spend $2,000 in child support a month to his ex-wife, and none of that money went to his kids. So, I just looked it up, and the average monthly mortgage payment in the United States is $1,029. Let's combine that with the $2,000 in monthly child support, plus, I don't know, let's just say $250 for taxes. That comes out to $3,300 a month that this guy was paying to supplement his ex-wife's lifestyle. And let me see here. OP was 6 when they got divorced, and he said he had 2 years of college, so we have to assume, let's say age 20, 3,300 times 12 months times 16 years. Oh my God, equals $633,600. That's how much money this guy paid so that this woman could not work, could not watch her kids, and so that he could never see his children. This guy spent $250,000 on this woman's narcissism. Oh my God, this is so depressing. Man, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've read a lot of stories about a lot of awful, just terrible parents for this channel, for this podcast. You know, you read the stories and you're like, wow, these people suck. This is a really terrible mother. This is an entitled mother. This person's a narcissist. They have no business having kids. But, you know, as some of you know, I'm a new father now. My wife and I just had a baby really recently, like a month ago. And oh my God, reading these stories now, it hits me in a way that they've never hit me before. I can't even imagine having to look at my daughter in the eyes and hear her say, "Daddy, we don't have any food in the house. Can you buy us food? We're hungry." And then being like, "No, I'm going to spend this money on other stuff." I can't even. Our next Reddit post is from Pristine Accident. I used to work for a married couple, Billy, a 52-year-old guy, and Gigi, a 44-year-old woman. They owned a business services public relations agency. It lasted more or less for a year. They seemed nice and humble, but in reality, they were shady and untruthful. The company began to falter because of poor management and zero intention to prioritize. Billy was your baby-face next-door neighbor type. He looked about 10 years younger than he really was and had a kind smile. He was soft-spoken and had an artistic and creative flair. Gigi looked matronly with a Mother Earth incarnate attitude towards her children. She prided herself on being ruthless when it came to giving her family only the best. She could be really nice when she wanted to, but I found out early on that she would 100% gossip behind your back and be two-faced. The company's constant changes were a red flag. They went from a PR agency to an IT provider to a business incubator to indie beer partners. What I'm trying to say is that they wanted to dip their donut in everyone's coffee, figuratively speaking. Some of their employees had no real way to escape. The lady working next to me was already 67 years old and scared that no one would hire her. I wasn't in a great place either. We were 8 employees in total. They wouldn't lay anyone off because they believed that the employee should quit. They paid us only a portion of our salaries. Most employees would just run for the hills once they found a better job, but some of us were stuck. It was horrible. They would pay us our full salaries for 1 month and then go back to the reduced rate the next month. They would never cut down on their luxury expenses. So, the wife would post her shopping sprees online or arrive in a new car like it was nothing. Zero empathy. Very insensitive. The husband was obsessed with making it big time. So much so that he sometimes failed to see an opportunity that was right in front of him. He claimed that he was Coca-Cola's brand manager. I swear I looked it up, but I couldn't find any information about that. They only wanted to work with big businesses, but in the meantime, they looked down upon tangible potential clients. For example, they turned down this young Latino couple who showed up trying to learn more about their services. They were looking for someone to help them set up a small coffee business, and they had no idea how it was done. I talked to them and showed them to the waiting room. They even showed up with their baby in a stroller. That means that they must have just driven by and decided to come in. Impulsive clients are great clients because they're money spenders. Once Billy showed up, he listened for a bit, then kind of gave them an abrupt dismissal. This was a dick move because the couple opened their own business with someone else, and they even had a Facebook page. Billy could have easily taken them on as his new clients. Billy lined his office walls with posters of Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. Every time an employee disagreed with Billy during a brainstorming session, Gigi would call them aside and tell them, "Billy is your boss. You need to know that he's brilliant and a genius. I want him to have that taste of success." I also hated brainstorming because those meetings were never in my job description. They just wanted to pick everyone's brains on pointless things. We had to look at their Pandora jewelry, the expensive makeovers for their daughter, and the weekends at the spa updates on Facebook. Gigi's captions were usually about rewarding herself after a hard week because I deserve it. Oh, and also they bought into that whole social guru thing. So, if an employee ever got angry, Gigi would tell you, "Remember, the one who gets angry is the one who ends up losing." For anyone who's been in this situation, you can understand how painful it can be. You can't leave the job because you have no other job waiting for you. And as pathetic as it may sound, some income is better than no income. This is an involuntary compromise, and it's abusive. Why were we expected to pay for their luxuries via incomplete wages? My best friend's ex was into coding and programming, and he agreed to help me. If it didn't work out, at least we would have something to laugh about. We created a website for a fake company with a matching LinkedIn, the whole 9 yards. To make a long story short, my friend and I invented a fake investment company. Posing as this company, my friend started liking my employer's Facebook page. Then he commented on the page. Before we knew it, my boss took the bait. They exchanged emails, and Billy was eager to share all of his project ideas. Meanwhile, my friend sent Billy a list of requirements, like proof of concept, employer payroll, employee identification number, etc. Posing as the company, my friend agreed to work with him if they could prove they were legit and up to date. So, to be clear, OP's friend, while posing as the company, asked Billy to verify that his company was actually legitimate. To do this, OP's friend requested that Billy send over the company's financial verification, which would include verification that all the employees had been paid. So, in order to prove that they were a legitimate company, Billy had to go pay all the back wages to all of his employees. Then, as soon as all the employees got paid, this investment company just ghosted Billy. Within 3 weeks, I was paid the equivalent of 2.5 months of my salary, which, by the way, was all money that I was owed. My friend then shut everything down and never contacted Billy again. I left the job as soon as I could. My friend, who remained until she got paid, told me that our boss seemed off and a bit down after he announced that big things were coming, but it all seemed to deflate. I never told my friend what was really going on. All right, OP, let me get this straight. In the course of 1 year, your boss changed the direction of his company, the fundamental thing they did, 4 times. They spent basically all of their profits on luxury goods, rather than reinvesting it back into the company. They underpaid their employees, which is super illegal. And then they got catfished and scammed out of thousands of dollars just because your friend made a snazzy website. Geez, it's no wonder their business didn't survive. That was our R.J-Redheart revenge.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? "I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.